Hello, hello.
So today I will talk about Tania Bruguera because I think there is a very important thing happening now about the boycott of and Tania is artist and activist, and she's leading this boycott that is also supported by many people in the art scene. And the situation in Cuba itself, the political situation, there were so many arrests, so many artists being arrested and in home arrest, in arrest. Tania herself, she was arrested 3 times during this period, just before. I thought maybe I could talk about Coco Fusco as well, but
Marcia, is she from Cuba as well?
She's from Cuba as well. Her work is super interesting too. And she was talking about in this Zoom about the biennial in the end that I took this picture, but also about other things. But and here I put a bit of this lyric that it's like it's more against the failures of the revolution, because Cuba, well, the revolution was 60 years ago, and Cuba became a very authoritarian regime. There's just one party, and there is no place for opposition. The dissidents are, there is a stigma, and
they have the boycott for the Biennale, and in the end we'll have in November.
The Biennale is scheduled to open in November, but there is this big, strong protest asking to boycott the Biennale. So they are not going to participate, and there are many artists who are not going to participate, many curators who are invited to give talks, to do things in the Biennale, and they are already in the movement of not participating. So there are more and more people adhering.
People in Cuba are getting arrested and can't protest. Is that so, Marcia?
If you think the revolution, it was such a big thing. It's so unique. At the beginning, Cuba was very dependent of the Soviet Union. And when there was the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was a very big crisis
economic,
in Cuba. Yes, the shortage of food. There was no petrol, and so it was a history of a lot of hardship. And this lyric here as well was being used. And the main thing is that Patria, vida, it was the slogan for the revolution, was Patria or muerte. So they make a little Patria, vida. We want to be seen as Cubans internationally, but you want freedom. This young generation want freedom, want the internet, want the,
I visited Cuba in 2003, and I felt that very, very strongly, that people they are proud of what they achieved in the revolution, but it was, at the end of the Soviet Union was about the end of the 90s. Né? So it has been like 5 years after that, or 4 years after that. And so Cuba cannot grow, cannot breathe. It's terrible. Né? And Fidel at that time was still the president, and was trying to hold something that was claiming for change, for a renovation. And I think it's difficult. I don't think they're conducting very well this process of transition, because they have a very strong hardship in the financing everything. And so I might imagine that it's really hard for the young generation, for the artists, and also for this government, how to handle to open the economy and still keeping a kind of socialist ideology. but I think it's very nice to have this lyrics, because somehow it's the way people feel and think from within, né? So it's their say. It's very nice that you brought to us.
Shall I put a little bit? There is something I feel that, you know, the revolution is like a myth, you know, was something so big, so important, so unique, that after the revolution, no one could really criticize, no one could talk against it. And this new generation is the new generation who was born after the revolution. And these people feel they can. So these protests in July, I think, were different in this way, because they are coming to streets with a different approach. Because look, I put just a little.
Good.
Porque con tu voz se dan mis penas. Y este sentimiento ya es tan lejos. Tú me dueles tanto aunque estés lejos. Hoy me gusta caminar, para demostrarte que sin tus ideales. Somos humanos aunque no pensemos iguales. No nos tratemos ni dañemos como animales. Esta es mi forma de decírtelo. Llora mi pueblo y siento yo su voz. 59, yo doble 2, 60 años, trancada al dominó, bombo y platillo a los pinitos de La Habana, mientras en casa las cazuelas ya no tienen jama. Que celebramos si la gente anda deprisa, cambiando Che Guevara, llama al tipo la divisa. Todo ha cambiado, que no es lo mismo, entre tú y yo hay un abismo. Publicidad, un paraíso, un varadero, mientras las madres lloran por sus hijos que se fueron. 59, ya se acabó. 60 años, trancado con mi nombre, se acabó. 59, ya se acabó. 60 años, trancado con mi nombre. Somos artistas, somos sensibilidad. La historia verdadera, no la mal contada. Somos la dignidad de un pueblo entero pisoteada. A punta de pistola y de palabras que aún son nada. No más mentiras. Pueblo pide libertad, no más doctrina. Ya no gritemos patria o muerte, sino patria y vida. Y empezar a construir lo que soñamos. Lo que destruyeron con su mano. Que nos sigan
I stopped because it's long. Say Patria e Morte. They want to say life, isn't it?
Yeah, they want to live, né?
And no more doctrines. So it's quite strong and just.
Where does Tania live?
So Tania is an international Cuban, but she comes and goes. But recently she was back in Cuba, and she was arrested, and in the protests and all. She was arrested 3 times in I don't know, a short period, and the last time they released her but put her on home arrest and confiscated her passport. And Tania has like 24 hours police surveillance. She kind of made an agreement with the government that she would leave Cuba to teach in United States. In return, they would release other people. So she kind of always trying to make political deals in the middle of the situation. I think she's very clever politically with the perception she has of the institutions and the government. It's amazing her work. Let's see her work, the side of her artwork. So she was born in 1968 in Cuba. My biggest inspiration is injustice, and all of my work is a social experiment. So this is very important, I think, to be clear how her work is political and how she developed this in her work. I think it's quite clever. And she works with the with the people always. She was kind of changing through her career, but always including the people and using them like a material, like for the work itself, and questioning the institution and how the work relates to the institution, and giving also this voice always to the audience. One of the first works she makes, I think she was finishing her MA or BA in Cuba still in 85. She started this work that is an homage to Ana Mendieta. So she starts to reenact all Ana Mendieta's work, and in 85 is the time the Ana Mendieta dies, and Ana Mendieta had a very strong migration history. She left Cuba because Cuba had waves of exiles, and Mendieta was the first wave. She was just 12. Really strong, was traumatic, very traumatic to her to have left her parents. She left with her sister to live in America. They would send the children, you know, to have a better life. And there was this operation, and she lived in many orphanages. And there is a stigma too of the people who live, you know, the Cuba, at that time and in the other waves as well, would be, they would have a stigma. We wouldn't talk about them. So people wouldn't know about Mendieta at that time in Cuba. So that's why Bruguera started this work. It's not because she loves Mendieta work, visually, and she wants to make it again as an object. It's not. That's the thing, I think, since the beginning is quite clear. It's very political, and that's why she makes this work at that time. She also has this thing in other works as well, that the work that just exists and is have meaning because it's connected to a political situation at the place and at the time. So this work was made for this time, to talk about Mendieta, to think about the importance of her and how she was invisible for Cuba in a moment that there was another wave of migration and it was being stigmatized again. You see, so it was, she reenacts all the work, she starts to make them all. And it's a very long, she makes this from 85 to 96. So Bruguera has also many works that she calls, that she thinks is the most important works, that are long time works. And this one was the next one I put here, is then Postwar Memory, is a series that she makes newspapers. There was just one newspaper that was controlled by the government. No one could publish independent newspapers. So it's the way she finds, she says sometimes that, that her work is about loopholes. So she decides to make it because if you can't make a newspaper, I'm going to make an artwork that isn't a newspaper. But end up being confiscated, being taken and destroyed. But she made 3. And I think one of them and was shown later on in the biennial too, about because the biennial had this big in the beginning. The first 3 biennials were really about Latin America, the third world, giving the visibility to the artists that were not that visible. And
I think it's, very, very good to use the papers, as we saw with Lotte Rosenfeld, also, how do you say, the typography. They are reproducing the Grama, which was the official newspaper at the time of the revolution, a very important newspaper. So I think it has everything to do with Latin America, postal art, and this kind of how you mentioned, she's very smart, the way she manages to organize the ideas and put it to the world, assim, presents. Very interesting. A different kind of strategies.
And this in the beginning of her career was already clear. If you see that it was freedom of expression, one of her subjects. That's the main thing, because you couldn't talk, you couldn't make they can talk about this and this subject. So she made a paper that she can talk, the others can talk as well. She always give also, she has quite a lot of collaboration works, and also later on she will make completely clear that she wants the audience to have the power and to talk. So it's freedom of expression. So this is another work she makes, that she also make a series when it's not a long-term project. Many times a series, because this is the first one she made, and it's maybe the most famous, that is called Untitled, then Havana 2000. So it will be always Untitled and the place that is made and the year. So this was the first one. It was a room that was very dark and had this video of Fidel unbuttoning his shirt, and you could see that he didn't have the bulletproof, but he had so many people protecting him, but this vulnerability. And then in the room of the exhibition would be very dark, just with this video. And then you would have sugarcane on the floor. There were some men, like if it was like surveillance, like people just there watching, and they would be naked. And the other ones, the Untitled, she made the next was in the Documenta de Cássio. So it was in Germany, and it was the opposite. It was a room, was very loss of light. You would come and you couldn't see anything because there was loss of light, and on the floor was metal, and it was about the war, and there would be people unloading the gun. So they are very provocative, these works, you know, people, they are made for the people to feel uncomfortable and think critically about a political situation. The one in then in Palestine was Palestine and Israel conflict, was about that. And there was one in Moscow that she got KGB former KGB who had the skills of psychological interrogation. So she asked them to use the skill to help people. So she would get the real people with their professional skill and ask them to help people with their psychological problems. It would be like a workshop. So later on, she will do as well some work interested in this thing of using the real skills of the people, professional skills. But after doing the Untitled ones, she thought that people in the biennals, in the Documenta, they would come in a crowd and couldn't really understand the work the way she really wanted people to get involved. So she had this big change. She decided to do this work that is a long time work, and she opened a school. It's another loophole, and she could get this license to be an academic teacher. So she opened, I think in her house, a school, and a school that would teach performance art and things that wouldn't be taught in the traditional schools of art. So she would be able to really engage with the artists, with the new artists, and it was like a school to really, you know, focus on critical thinking, in performance art, in everything that it wasn't allowed and she sees, you know, this school and this group of people as a work of art. You know, her art is always a social practice that works with the people, all the people involved. So it was like a long-term project. And then these I decided to put here because most of her work, and she says, are not objects. I always work with the public, but there are some collaborations that are kind of objects, and I like this one very much because they make a pact that they will send a letter to each other during 1 year, every week. And they will, I think it's Tania who sent to Thomas every week, wherever she is in the world, she'll send the letter. And he will never open. All the letters are there, sealed with the seal, the red seal, and they put a string and put in a box, and no one ever opens. So it's about this impossibility of communication. And then she made this work here at Tate. That I have a little video I could show. I think it's very good, the little video she's talking about. But she make also a series of Tatting Whispers. And so she got 2 policemen on horse to be at the Tate. It was a group show. And she doesn't put her name in the group show. So no one knows that this is a work. No one knows that, you know, in the board, when you come to Tate, you don't know that she has a work, that this is a work. But she put them, the policemen there, and asked them to work as they would in a protest, you know, like putting the people all in one side, putting the other. So people trying to get into the gallery, they don't let people go. And with the horse, how they are trained to go with the horse sideways to repress the crowd. So she says that it's very important for her that people don't realize this is an artwork and feel really, you know, repressed and in the situation. And this, I think it's really clever. It's really nice of, you know, how she works, because it's this detail and this perception of how the institution, how the political system works. And I think she sells this work, but she make an agreement that they can have the work, have the video or whatever is the documentation, but they have to reenact the work, because when it's a performance work, you buy, but you can reenact, make it again in another time. But it has to be in a time where the political situation in the country is going through a trouble, terrorism, protests, something major, you know, to make sense. So she puts it very clear that this work has to be connected to a real social situation that the country is going through to be reenacted. And the other thing is that they also have to allow the public, the audience, to take pictures, to sell the pictures, to post the pictures, because she always says the audience, the public, they are my material, so I have to give back something to them. You know, she always wants to give back to the people something. I will show a little bit of the piece.
And you encounter 2 mounted police dressed with their uniform on their horses, and who are actually using all the techniques they learn in the police academy and through their experience as policemen to control the audience of the exhibition. You have these police who are coming towards you and giving you direction of what to do, where to move, if you have to stand or you have to move somewhere. And they're using actually the horses to make this happen, like they usually do in their everyday job.
Amazing how we tend to believe in this authority. Yeah, amazing.
Amazing.
You just obey, okay, sir,
Yeah.
okay, go. And
Because the sign represents too much. It's a very strong
it's an
sign.
institution that's stronger than you, and you feel.
Yeah.
And do all the rest.
Since the Indians, when the Indians saw the Spanish on top of a horse,
Well,
it was
before, even
yeah.
before.
Reaction
amazing.
in real life when you see the police controlling them. For me, it's very important. I am
Really interesting.
a stage of power also, but through the image. So every piece I've done so far, let's say the quotation, the visual quotation is an image I've seen on TV, in the news on TV. And this is very important because it's how can you transform our main source of political education or bad education, which is the news, into something else. Mounted police is something you can see in the photos in the 68. You can see it in, 35, 1935, 1968, and 2000. So it's kind of a historically recurrent image of power. And always linked to a very specific political action in order from the audience, from the people. So yeah, and I really like that people here were reacting with the same kind of a spirit, like, oh, is this about controlling people? Is this about terrorism? So I really like that people really have all this inside them that they don't want to think about it.
And this is a Tatting Whispers 6 that is incredible, I think, this work. And this work had a development enormous afterwards. The first one she did was in 2009, and it was the time that Fidel was leaving the power, wasn't it? I don't know, he was already ill, he was kind of not appearing that much, and then he gives more space to his brother. But so she makes in the biennial this kind of stage that was exactly like the stage that he would come to talk, to address the people, something that happened all the time, and would have these two guards, the same kind of dress that they would use. And there was a situation when he spoke for the first one of his first speech, that the dove came and landed on his shoulder. She wants the people to come and talk for 1 minute about whatever they want. So it's totally about free speech. There is a video I could show a little bit. The first person who goes in the podium, the stage to talk, she is so emotional because no one was allowed to go and speak to a crowd. And the other thing that is really clever, I think, about her work, that she gives 200 cameras to the audience, flash cameras, to have there to take pictures during the performance. Why? To protect the audience. In case something happened, the police come, interrupt, arrest someone, you have 200 cameras, 200 pictures, So I think it's beautiful that, she comes with that solution in the biennial, where she wants also to protect the audience and give them this 1 minute of free speech. Shall I put a little bit of the video, just the beginning?
This place is the main hotel in Cuba, Hotel Nacional, where everything happens. It's a very beautiful place.
realizar el ejercicio de opinión discrepante. El día que en este país se anuncie con toda claridad la generalizada discrepancia política, seremos testigos de una acción fundamental. La Asamblea de Estado me cogió los papeles que me incautó, no me ha devuelto todavía. Me dijeron que me iban a incautar. Me quitaron una memoria flash y borraron donde estaba ahí la memoria flash. Tenía una fotografía y me hacían parte. No te falta que le devuelvan mis papelitos conmigo.
Não dá para escutar, mas eu acho que só a imagem já é forte o suficiente, né? Os dois guardas
Demais,
do lado da bomba.
demais. E essa bomba, this dove over the shoulder, it's amazing.
But I'll put a bit
Yeah,
of the,
but it's nice.
the one that was reenacting Tate.
It's a healthier society.
That is a better quality video.
2012, Ai Weiwei was arrested. His difficulties are not unconnected with Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden. Ai Weiwei knows too much. We all know too much.
Had managed to paint the tiger using a phrase to keep whispering in its ear. In just a few days, you will be free again.
If the source for your suspicion is the colour of a man or woman's skin, then stop and search again. Try and look deep within. Count the lies you've been fed before you count to 10.
Had car accidents or who are in comas, they have sedated, they have a tube down their throat that helps them to breathe, but it stops them from speaking. I'm reminded that a voice is a gift, and I'd like to thank everybody for sharing today.
So she made this first one that is really emotional there because people, I think then people didn't know they are trying just to go and speak, and was at the moment that Fidel was leaving. So that's the first idea she had of having that empty space. But then she tried to make it again in Cuba, in the square, the Plaza de la Revolución. And that was when she was arrested, and lots of people who went there to talk were arrested. So there was a big movement in the art scene, international art scene, to reenact, to make it again. So there was in Tate, there was in the Times Squares, there were in many, and then there was this other long-term project she makes that she calls this Immigrant Movement International, and she always has this thing of the language as well. So she wants to call internationals instead of immigrants, the people, and people from everywhere. And she goes and lives with the immigrants, and she teach them art and English, and there are more people involved in this Immigrant Movement International. It happened as well in Mexico. So it's like a long-term project where she develops many things. And I think in this, in the Immigrant Movement International, she even founded a political party. Well, this is beautiful because she works she comes to do the work at Tate in Turbine Hall, and she works with the community of the area in Elephant and Castle, that is a community, Latin American community, and she shows this immigrant, this person, a photo of him, to be on the floor of the Tate Gallery, but she put this thermo, this material that you can just see his face if 300 people would lay down on the floor at the same time, and then the face would appear, the image would appear. And there was a little room at the side as well that was a room that you could, there was this organic chemical, but you would get into this room and you would start crying, would have a reaction with your tears. And the name of the work is this number, that is the number of people who migrate plus the amount of people who died migrating. So it's a number that changes the name of the world. And they decided, she asked Tate as well to name the room. So one of the people from the neighborhood project, Natalie Bell, ended up being called Natalie Bell Building, that's part of Tate. So it's one person, but it's one person who represents a whole community. And it's not someone important when you say a name of a building or something, someone famous, rich, important. No, it's just one person who helps the community.
I've been working for a very long time with the immaterial, the intangible, and trying to push the limit of art into feeling more than seeing. It only come alive when you intentionally want it to come alive. My name is Tania Bruguera. I'm an artist and an activist, and I try, hopefully with my work, to transform audience into active citizens. Hopefully when people arrive to a turbine hall, they will think that nothing has changed, that the building had no intervention at all. I want them to understand that things only change and happen in society when you intervene in them. A very important part of the Turbine Hall Commission has been the work with Tay Neighbors, which is a group of activists, artists, elders, young people who live in the SC1 zip code. In this case, it's the first project that is being conceived within the consultation and the creative input of the community.
The community in Elephant and Castle is probably the most huge Latin American community in London. Some shops, for example, like this one, has been open for more than 15 years.
Natalie Bell is a wonderful, amazing activist. She has changed and empowered the life of young people. And we are thrilled to be able to bring to light the work she has done. We asked her, can you give us an example how really the work you do change the life of somebody? And then she came up with Yusuf.
Yusuf is an amazing young man. He is from Syria, and he fled because of the war. By the time he arrived here, he had nothing. I don't do things for people, I just open doors. It's up to people to go through or not. And a lot of people have opened doors for me, so I just like to pass it on. And I think like Yusuf is a typical shining example of that he's now set up his own organisation in Brighton to help other young people and young students. And he wants to be a doctor so that he can help other people.
There's a big tradition of portraiture. You know, kings are being portrayed, or famous people. And I say, let's do a big portrait of Yusuf. The portrait is covered by thermochromic ink. So the only way people will see it is if they all get together and with their heat will uncover the image. Normally in the news, the biggest news are the sad news. Here we want to subvert that, so the big story, the big portrait is a good story. There is a small space where you can cry together with other people. You start feeling water in your eyes without understanding why. And the whole point of the piece is, can we relearn to feel for others again? I've been collaborating with a wonderful artist called Nine. He has created this sound landscape. And it's going to be very subtle. It might be like a hum, but hopefully it's something you feel in your body. When you open the Wi-Fi, a new page will come in with the terms and conditions done by the neighbors. What we're trying to do is make a call to action. And we have our manifesto that I think is quite beautiful.
It's so relevant, this talk, Marcia. I was really glad to listen to it.
Very good.
So relevant.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia. It is wonderful her work. You know, I just know some pieces, just connected her, but it's brilliant if you see how the timeline of her progress or how she created. It's really fantastic. It's brilliant.